Greetings, everyone. We are in week 3 of our program, and today we are going to talk about physical activity. So the objectives for the week are to discuss the health benefits of regular physical activity, to learn about it, to discuss national physical activity guidelines, to identify our personal level of physical activity and whether we are meeting those recommended guidelines, identify ways to increase physical activity, and discuss some strategies to overcome activity barriers or to start performing more physical activity than many of us are currently. Some definitions to get us started. So first of all, physical activity is any bodily movement produced by skeletal muscles that results in an expenditure of energy. So basically, physical activity is anything other than sitting or sleeping or being sedentary. And it can be things such as walking, it can be doing housework, it can be making beds, it can be playing with kids or with animals. It doesn't have to be structured and specific. Exercise, on the other hand, is physical activity that is planned and structured. It involves repetitive bodily movement done to improve or maintain one or more of the components of physical fitness. So exercise would be running or lifting weights or something that is done specifically for a physical benefit, whereas physical activity can just be movement in general. And both of these are very, very, very important and beneficial, as we will learn about more. Physical fitness is a set of attributes people have or achieve that relates to their ability to perform physical activity. So the components of physical activity would be the components of physical fitness would be cardiorespiratory endurance or aerobic fitness. So how healthy the heart and the lungs are and how much activity they can manage. Some people have a lot of this and can be, have an elevated heart rate and be active and performing a high level of physical activity for several minutes or hours. Other people have very little and get worn out and tired after just a few minutes. Muscular strength is what it sounds like. The strength that people have, this varies tremendously between people and can be built through activities such as weightlifting. Muscular endurance is how long the muscles can withstand a stress on them. Again, some people have great endurance. Their muscles will withstand a lot of insult and for a long period of time, where the others are not. Flexibility is how well different joints move through a range of motion and how full that range of motion is. So we think about this as things as people being able to touch their toes or being able to reach over their head or across their body with their arms or things like that. And the more flexible joints are, the easier it is to do physical activity. When people are really tight and stiff, it can be challenging to move in ways that are needed to really be active. And again, this can be improved with stretching and with flexibility exercises. And then body composition is the way that people are made or the way that their body appears as far as muscle distribution and fat distribution and things like that. And so all of these are components and contribute to people's ability to be active. So why do we recommend physical activity? Why can't we all just sit around and do nothing all day and call it good? And there are many reasons for this. Physical activity has tremendous benefits for our bodies and for our minds, which we will talk about a little bit more in the next slide. But Dr. Ruth Peterson sums it up, says, if you could package physical activity into a pill, it would be the most effective drug on the market. Being sufficiently physically active can help to prevent premature death, breast cancer, colorectal cancer, diabetes, heart disease, obesity, many of our main chronic conditions and problems that cause people lots of difficulty in their lives and cost the healthcare system lots of money. As you see, their physical inactivity, so people not being sufficiently active, contributes about $117 billion to healthcare costs annually. So not only is it important for us on a personal level, it's important for us on a societal level to help control our healthcare costs and to keep ourselves and our communities healthy. Some of these benefits are listed here. So increased fitness, as we talked about, the ability to do the things we want to do, having better endurance, better strength, preventing weight gain. So it's much easier to maintain a healthy weight if you are sufficiently active, and to lose weight as well, which we will talk about shortly. Improved mood. Physical activity is very strongly linked with decreased rates of depression and stress and anxiety, and can help people just generally feel more energetic and better overall. Prevent falls, especially among older adults who have impaired balance or some impaired muscle strength, and people with diabetes who have neuropathy or other problems. Being physically active, and particularly doing specific balance and strengthening exercises, can be huge in preventing falls and injuries. Sleeping better, being more active during the day and getting enough physical activity to wear out the body and the mind a little bit helps with sleep. Independence, again, oftentimes with older adults, if they become more sedentary and less physically active and decrease physical fitness, they are much more reliant on others and needing to live in places where they can get assistance, not able to walk places, not able to drive, and things like that. So the more we take care of our bodies and the more active we are, the more likelihood there is that we will remain independent for many years of our lives. More energy, the more we do, the better we feel. Paradoxically, oftentimes people say that they feel much too tired to exercise or much too tired to do anything. And interestingly, taking that step and actually doing it increases energy rather than taking it away. It's kind of like love, right? The more we give, the more we have to give. We don't run out. And physical activity is the same way. The more we do, to a point, the more energetic we feel to do more. If you do some really huge strenuous workout, of course, you're going to be tired afterwards. But generally, the more we do, the better we feel. A lower stroke risk, so decreases the incidence of strokes and oftentimes cardiovascular disease by boosting that cardiorespiratory fitness. Improved focus, so oftentimes it's recommended that before having to do something, taking really good concentration or focus on a really hard task, it can be beneficial to take a short walk beforehand to help really focus the mind and get into that mind frame to be able to do what you need to do mentally. Slower onset of dementia, so keeps the mind healthy and agile for a long period of time, the more active our bodies are. Reduced blood pressure, and this happens in many ways, a lot through increasing the ability of the blood vessels to dilate and to constrict, and improves the efficiency of the heart. Improved cognition, so related to some of these things with the slower onset of dementia and the improved focus, it really helps our brains to work much more efficiently and much better. So how are we doing as far as getting physical activity? The recommendations are for 150 minutes per week of moderate intensity aerobic activity, which we will talk about more in the next slide. And that's on the left. Over here on the right, we see a chart looking at physical inactivity in our county, in Weld County. And so the bar, or the axis on the left, is the percent of people that are physically inactive. So these are people that are getting essentially none, 0 minutes of physical activity each day or each week. The red line is Weld County. The green line is Colorado, and then the blue line at the top is the United States. So the lower on the chart is better. At the bottom would be 0% of adults are physically inactive. The higher is worse. So you can see the national average is somewhere between 20 and 30%, and actually going down. It's getting better over the past several years. The red line, Weld County, was lower and is approaching that 20% range. So in Weld County and in Colorado as a whole, physical activity measures are actually getting worse over the past 10 to 20 years or so. So as far as the recommendations, how much physical activity do I need? First of all, adults should move more and sit less throughout the day. Any physical activity is better than none. And sedentary behavior, sitting in particular, is associated with many, many, many health risks. Even people who are getting a lot of physical activity on the weekends or on days off, if they sit throughout the course of the day, they do have increased mortality risk, increased heart disease risk, increased diabetes risk in comparison to people who are more active in general throughout the course of the day. So that should be point number one for you guys to think about, is just moving at all at 30-minute, at hour intervals throughout the day is very important and has tremendous benefits. Then for health benefits as far as more structured physical activity, the recommendation, as we mentioned, is 150 to 300 minutes a week of moderate intensity activity, or 75 to 150 minutes a week of vigorous intensity activity, and we'll talk about the difference between those in just a minute, or an equivalent combination of this moderate and vigorous physical activity, or in aerobic activity. And so the aerobic activity should be spread throughout the week rather than doing all your 300 minutes in one day. It should be spread throughout at least, 4 to 5 to 6 to 7 days of the week, and at least 10 minutes at a time. So it does not have to be done all at once, but it should be done in at least 10-minute bouts rather than 1 minute here or 1 minute there for the best benefit. There are additional benefits by engaging in physical activity beyond that 300 minutes of moderate physical activity a week, but the benefits slow. And adults should also do muscle strengthening activities of moderate to greater intensity involving all major muscle groups at least 2 days a week, as these activities provide additional health benefits. So these would be things such as lifting weights or doing Pilates or doing, sit-ups or push-ups or anything like that that helps to build strength throughout the body in all body parts. So arms, legs, back, core muscles of the abdomen, everything like that. We should work on strengthening those at least 2 days a week. Recommendations for children are for a little bit more. So young children need to be able to participate in physical activities throughout the day. Oftentimes they will do this on their own. If we've been around toddlers lately, they are virtually impossible to get to sit still. So they are just up and moving and running and climbing and playing throughout the day, which is perfect. That's exactly what they should be doing. Again, preschool age children should be active throughout the day as much as possible, and caregivers and adults should encourage active play that includes different types of activity types. So again, the climbing, the crawling, the going over things and under things, and running and jumping. So they're just moving their bodies in all kinds of different ways. Children and adolescents should do 60 minutes, so an hour of moderate to physical activity daily. So that's a little bit more than for adults, right? Adults is the 150 minutes, whereas children is 60 minutes every day. So most of the 60 minutes should be moderate to vigorous, and vigorous should be at least 3 days a week for these young folks. Also, they should be doing muscle strengthening activities at least 3 days a week, and bone strengthening activities at least 3 days a week. Bone strengthening activities are typically those things that are weight bearing. So swimming would not be, bicycling really would not be. These would be things more like running and walking, and where you're putting stress on the bones, which helps to make them stronger. So why do we get to this 150 minutes for adults? Is it just a random number that somebody chose because they thought it was nice and pretty? And the answer, as you can imagine, is no. There is quite a lot of research showing that this is truly the period, this 150 to 300 minutes of physical activity, where you get the most bang for your buck. As you can see in this chart here, so on the y-axis on the left, up and down, is the hazard ratio of mortality. And then on the x-axis, going from left to right, is the time of physical activity. And this is in MET hours per week, which has to do with metabolic equivalence, so the amount of energy that is expended in the activity. And so don't get caught up on that part, but we'll look through the chart here. So at 0 MET hours per week, so these would be the people that are physically inactive, getting essentially no physical activity throughout the course of the week, of which we saw there are close to 20% of people in Weld County fit in that category. They are at a 1. Their risk of death is the baseline. Then, as you can see, even moving just a tiny bit between the 0 and the 5 hours of MET hours per week, there is a very, very steep decline. So within about 2.5 MET hours per week, that first bar there on the left at 0.8 is the hazard ratio. So those people have a 20% reduced risk of mortality, of death, from those who are exercising not at all or getting no physical activity. And then that line continues to go quite steeply down. It becomes not quite so steep, but then continues to go quite steeply down until we get to that about 10 MET hours of physical activity a week, that 10 to 15. And that's what translates into this 150 to 300 minutes of moderate physical activity per week. And so there's still a tremendous benefit there between as compared to people getting no physical activity. So there's about 70% benefit reached within this gain. And people who are getting that amount of physical activity have about a 30 to 40% reduced risk of mortality as compared to those getting none throughout the course of the week. And then you can see beyond this point, the curve really starts to flatten out. It does still start declining. It does still continue declining a small amount as we get to the very higher levels of physical activity, but the benefits are not nearly as great as they are in the beginning. There is typically not considered to be any upper limit of physical activity. However, there is some data showing that people who are doing really huge levels of physical activity, upwards of 40, 50 hours a week, are beginning to have a slight increase in mortality again. So potentially we should not do too much, but there is a very, very large amount of exercise we can do that will continue to benefit us. So some key takeaways from this slide that I want you guys to keep in mind, and probably the number one, is that any physical activity is better than none. As you saw, again, there's that steep early slope, and anything will be of benefit. And again, really that best benefit is within the first 150 to 300 minutes per week. And so trying to aim for that will benefit you tremendously. So if trying to lose weight or maintain weight loss, the exercise requirements or needs go up quite a bit more. So to lose weight, recommend 30 to 60 minutes or more per day, again, of this moderate to vigorous of physical activity. And rather unfairly, as you start losing weight, physical activity may need to be increased further. Both the time spent doing it and the intensity. So if you were walking at a moderate pace, as you start to lose weight, you may need to up that pace and up that time that you're doing it. This is not some cruel trick by the powers that be. This is because your body actually becomes more efficient at using calories and at just functioning in general. The basal metabolic rate, the rate of calories we use on a day-to-day basis, actually declines as we lose weight. And so we have to work a little bit harder to get some more weight to come off. To maintain weight loss, again, it does require a lot of time being active, 60 to 90 minutes of moderate activity per day. And so it's not something that you can go and work out for 10 minutes a day and call it good. It really takes some time and some commitment to promote and to maintain weight loss. And importantly, it must be combined with a healthful diet. We will talk more about nutrition the next couple of weeks, but you cannot exercise away poor dietary choices. There is no amount of exercise in the world that can undo the damage and the problems with eating 25 cheeseburgers a day. Maybe some, professional athletes who are riding in the Tour de France and burning, 10 to 20,000 calories a day could get away with that, but the vast majority of us cannot. And what we eat is essential for maintaining our weight and for our health. And then most important also to think about is there are benefits to physical activity independent of weight loss. And so even if you feel like you're exercising and you're eating and you're not losing weight nearly as fast as you would like to be, there are significant benefits. Your heart is getting stronger, your body is getting stronger, and there is a decline in mortality with people who are more physically active yet remain overweight than in those who are still sedentary. So what counts as physical activity and what should I do? So there are many options. As far as what's most important to do would be what can you do? What do you like and what will you continue doing? If you tell yourself, I am going to run, but you absolutely despise running, then probably that's not something you're going to keep up. So the best activity is the one you like the most and that you can commit to. On the left here, we have some examples of moderate activity walking, moderate activity exercises or things that are of a moderate intensity. So brisk walking, doing some water aerobics, riding a bike, dancing, playing tennis, pushing a lawnmower, hiking, rollerblading, things like that. Whereas vigorous activity would be jogging or running, swimming fast, riding a bike fast or up steep hills, walking up the stairs, playing team sports, football, rugby, soccer, hockey, skipping rope, doing aerobics or step classes, gymnastics, and some martial arts. And there's some additional resources here at the CDC's Active People Healthy Nation, and we'll talk a little bit more about having a partner to help you in this your endeavors. So how do I know how intense my activity is? And there are many ways to measure this. One is the metabolic equivalence, which is how fast your heart rate goes and how fast you're breathing. There are other ways like looking at your oxygen consumption and all kinds of things that are really can be very accurate but are not feasible on a day-to-day basis. One of the most simple and easiest ways for people to gauge how hard they're working and whether their activity is light, moderate, or vigorous is to think about what's called the talk or the sing test. So light activity, you can talk and sing without difficulty. So this would be certainly sitting still or walking, maybe very slowly, or things like that where there's really no change in your breathing and no change in your ability to talk and notably to sing. Moderate activity, you can still talk, but you wouldn't be able to sing. You don't have quite enough breath to use that extra breath for the singing. You're using it just to power your body. You can still carry on a pretty reasonable conversation, but may not be able to talk at length without having to take some breaths. Then vigorous activity would be where you can barely talk. So this is when you feel so out of breath, you're using every bit of your breath just to power your body, and you can't say more than a word or two at a time because you simply don't have the breath to do it. And so those, like I said, that's a really simple way and really fairly accurate way to assess how hard you're working and whether your activity is moderate or vigorous. And there will be variation in this, right? Some people who have been running for a million years can run for miles and it would be considered moderate for them, whereas other people who are just starting running, it would probably be considered vigorous until their cardiorespiratory fitness gets up to a point where they're able to manage it more. So is it safe for you to exercise? There are a few conditions for which it is not safe to begin exercise without a evaluation by a medical professional. There is included in your course materials an exercise pre-participation health screening questionnaire. If you answer yes, so please complete that and look through it. If you answered yes to step 1, we can talk about that and what would need to be done in order for you to be cleared to exercise safely. If you answer yes to step 2, and you are not currently exercising, you also need to have medical clearance that we can talk about. If the answers are no in both of those, then it is safe for you to begin exercise. It's recommended that you start at a low intensity and a low duration and gradually build up. So starting with that 10 minutes a few times a week, gentle, some walking, and then as you're building your fitness, you can build up to more time and more intensity, but start low and gradually build up. So how do I start? You need to think about why you want to do this. What are your motivations? Are you worried about your own health? Are you worried about the health of your family members, or want to be around for helping caring for younger people in the family or seeing them grow up? Do you want to look or feel better? Do you simply want to feel more fit or feel more healthy? So think about what inspires you. And look at also, there's a handout in your materials to help you think through some of these areas. Think about obstacles that you have and be realistic about this. We can tell ourselves that if we just want to do something, we can do it. And to some degree, that is absolutely true. But there are true obstacles as well. And so think about what yours are. Do you have enough time? What time do you have? What's your work schedule like? Are you an early morning person who can get up and do some physical activity before the day starts, or are you a late night person and you'd be better off doing it in the evening? Can you do it at home during the day? Do you need to do it outside? Truly think about what challenges would be and how you might be able to fit this into your life. So think about time, think about experience. If you don't have any and you've never done anything before, that can be challenging, and lack of support can be challenging as well. So think about ways that you could get support, somebody who could help you and do some physical activity or some exercise with you. And as far as experience, there are a lot of YouTube videos with different exercise routines and things like that, and also so much published resources and things like that that can help to get you going. So strategies, as we talked about, find a support person or a buddy to support you and to do your plan with you. Write down your plan. You're much more likely to be successful if you write it down rather than just have it in your head. And track your activity. There are tons of activity trackers out there, Fitbits and different smartwatches, and even just pedometers, or just plain old paper and pencil to write down what you did, for how long, how it felt, and that way you can track your progress over time and see what improvements you are having and what problems you're having, and think about ways to overcome them. And think about your strengths. Think about prior successes. Have you been active previously? What did you do? What did you like to do? What felt good about that? And your determination and your perseverance. We are all here, which means that you are interested in improving your health. And so focus on that, focus on why you're here and what you hope to achieve and your inner strengths and values. So also on that wave, talk about some goal setting. So think about, in your own mind, where would you like to be in 6 months? Are you somebody who wants to run a 5K race? Are you somebody who wants to be able to hike a specific trail? Do you just want to be stronger? What is your long-term goal? And what are you doing now? Or how close are you to that? Are you getting any type of physical activity? Or are you starting from scratch? And again, like we talked about, what have you done before? What might be something that is feasible for you to do? What motivates you? Why do you want to do this? And how much time are you willing to commit? Again, as we talked about, there are true restrictions on time. So be realistic and honest and think about how much time you actually have. And then from this, looking at these larger goals and the background of what you have, you want to set very specific goals and step-by-step goals for each bit of the way. And the goal, or the goal for these is for them to be fit. So fit into this acronym: frequency, intensity, type, and time. So I will do something, what type of exercise and activity, for how long, on how often, how many days, for the next how long. So some examples: I will walk briskly at a moderate intensity for 30 minutes in the morning before work on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for the next 4 weeks. So the frequency is the Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. The intensity is the moderate intensity. The type is the walking briskly. And the time is the 30 minutes in the mornings. And also the time duration is for the next 4 weeks. Another example would be, I will do 20 push-ups on Tuesday and Thursday mornings for the next 4 weeks. And it's important that these things be specific, and again, that they be written down. and that they are reasonable and achievable, that you are setting goals that may be stretch goals, somewhat challenging, but are not so hard that you won't be able to achieve them at all. And then you'll just get frustrated and quickly give up. So look in your course materials and think about filling in your FIT goal on the Starting an Exercise program. And what are some things or one thing that you could really start with in this physical activity arena? So this is an example of a little circuit training exercise that you could try out if you had 15 minutes to spare. This might not be something to try right off the bat, but something that most people would be capable of doing within a few weeks of starting some general light physical activity. So for this, you would start out with a 5-minute walk or a jog, whichever you feel comfortable with, then 5 minutes of body weight strength training. So these are things like being in a plank position, sitting against the wall, doing other types of resistance exercises or strengthening exercises where you use your own body as the weight. And then 5 minutes of plyometrics, which these are quick bursts of activities. So doing jumping jacks, doing burpees, lunge jumps, things like that. And this is a great way to exercise all these different parts of your body and to get these aerobic and strengthening and flexibility activities all within one 15-minute period. And there is also a handout in your course materials about what some of these exercises, the body weight strength training and these plyometric exercises would be for you to practice if you would like to do so. So in wrap up for today's topic, so what types of physical activity do you enjoy? These are things to be thinking about for our discussion in class. What types of physical activity have you stuck to in the past? And what might you be able to try now? Some handouts that we have there to work on: the exercise assessment, goal setting, and barriers. And then we certainly look forward to talking to you in class. For next week, we will focus more on nutrition and its importance in maintaining our health as well.